The Indianapolis Colts face another must-win game this weekend, taking on the struggling New York Giants. But will the Colts have Anthony Richardson on Sunday? And will the Colts be able to contain Malik Neighbors? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, from here on out, must-win games for the Indianapolis Colts. We've already established that. Currently, after the games yesterday, which didn't really have much of an impact on the Colts' chances to make the playoffs, according to the New York Times, the Colts have a 20% chance to make the playoffs as things currently stand, which was honestly better than it was last weekend. But they've got to take care of business against this New York Giants team that, while currently holds the number one pick in the NFL draft, if you take them lightly, they're bound to get that win on Sunday.
Yeah, and they still have some players. I mean, you talk about injuries. Giants have a lot of injuries. They have a lot of injuries that they're going to have probably some game time decisions for. But yeah, man, I mean, this is still a team that fights. You know, Brian Dable is more of a boxing. He reminds me more of like a boxing coach than a football coach, just because he's such an absolute, like, tooth and nail type of guy. You know, he's not going to really take anything lightly. So I expect the Giants to fight in this one. They're going to be at home. I know that there's not a lot to play for other than, you know, potentially a number one pick. But I mean, as we've seen this Colts team do, and as you mentioned before the show, actually so profoundly, they're not good enough to take any team lightly, even the Giants.
No, exactly. So we're going to talk about everything that this game has to offer, including Anthony Richardson, because his name has popped up on the injury report. So what's it looking like for Sunday? We'll talk all about that. Jonathan Taylor coming off of a huge game against the Tennessee Titans, taking on an even worse rushing defense with the New York Giants. Could we see Jonathan Taylor break the record for most rushing yards in a game? Let's hold our horses on that. Plus, can this defense take on Drew Lock and not make Drew Lock look like the second coming of Aaron Rodgers? Let's hope for the Colts' sake that doesn't happen. But we're going to talk about everything about this game, give our predictions as we always do, get you set for Week 17. But before we do that, Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope you all had a fantastic holiday with family, friends, whoever you spent the day with. I know I certainly did, see both sides of the family. It was a fantastic day. Got to see my first son, or my son's first Christmas, actually wearing a shirt that my mother got me. Best dad in the Pride Lands, because it's true. And Simba and Mufasa kick ass. So of course I'm going to rock it on the show. We got to say shout out to Truett. It's good to see you. Is it draft week? Yeah, you got a long time, Truett, till draft week.
Long ways away, man.
And the Colts season's not over. Don't give up just yet, Truett. Let's we're gonna hold out on this thing till the very end. Stats, Matt, good to see you, my friend. The stats show a story that should help the Colts this week. I already know what those stats are. You sent them to me prior to the show, but you guys are going to see some fun stats tonight. Paul Wilson, our good friend, good to see you, buddy. Must win, but I think every game, every game for our coach, GM, and AR are must-win games. Merry Christmas, and of course, the Lions shout out. Paul, you're a gentleman and a scholar, and yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it's a must win for all three of those guys, because like I said, I think they're all going to be back next year, but certainly they need to win these games, you know, to end the season on a high note, end the season with some momentum to build on for the next season. So guys, we're going to dive into this matchup here with the Colts and the Giants. Be sure you're following us on all of our socials, like I always say. Like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell, turn those notifications on so you never miss us. And then if you can't catch us live, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well, obviously. So please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Colts are 7.5-point favorites heading to the Meadowlands. Drake, fun stat by Mike Chappell that the Colts actually have more wins at MetLife Stadium this year than the New York Giants. The Colts are 1-0 against the New York Jets. The Giants are 0-7 at home this year. Pretty crazy stat from the GOAT, Mike Chappell. So heading into this game, Drake, it does seem like the Colts absolutely should come out on top, and Vegas thinks they're going to come out on top fairly convincingly.
Yeah, and we'll dive into the Giants a little bit more, but you'll see why there's such a definitive line for the Colts here, and there's a clear path to victory that we'll also dive into. But again, I do remember in a galaxy, or what is it, a long time ago in a galaxy far away in the year 2021, when the Colts were like a negative 14-point favorite against the Jags, and we know how that turned out. So, I mean, don't discount any team in the NFL. And again, Andrew said something so profound, and it makes perfect sense, is that this team, they've got good players. The Colts have, had games where you're like, wow. And there's a lot of X factors that happen sometimes, like Jonathan Taylor last week. At times, Richardson, he pops off. But overall, this team hasn't played as an entire unit, really. And even in last week's game, the defense almost let up the game and almost allowed the Titans to climb back into it. So until I see a complete game here, you cannot, if you're the Colts, you can't take any team lightly. Like you said, you need to play offense, defense, and special teams all together to do that. And they haven't done that once this season. So.
Yeah, exactly. You have to put a game together. Can't take the New York Giants lightly. I don't care, what their record is or how badly they've performed this year. They're still in the NFL, and if the Colts think they're going to walk over this team, quite frankly, they're not good enough to walk over any team in the NFL at this point. So, Drake, but we got to talk about Anthony Richardson, because his name has been in the headlines, especially over the past, I'd say, 24 to 30 hours or so. Sure. And the reason for that is because Anthony Richardson has popped up on the injury report. So the Colts did not practice yesterday. They gave the team the day off. Tuesday, they just had a walkthrough, but the Colts still put out an injury report as an estimation, as what the players would have been if they did practice on Wednesday. And Anthony Richardson was a DNP, citing back and foot soreness. So I was like, okay, it's Wednesday. Some other Colts fans that kind of piqued their interest a little bit more today when they saw Anthony Richardson again on the injury report. Did not practice today, Thursday. Again, still dealing with back and foot soreness. But as has been mentioned by multiple guys on the beat, I think Stephen Holder was the first one to have it out there. The Colts are cautiously optimistic that Anthony Richardson will play on Sunday. He's responding well to treatment. He's feeling much better every single day. I just don't think they're trying to push things heading into this matchup. And Shane Steichen, I want to make sure I say this and get this out there. I don't think Anthony Richardson necessarily would even need to practice this week. You certainly want to, and I think the Colts are saying that tomorrow he is going to try to give it a go, and it's going to be big to see how he responds to that. But we've seen Shane Steichen say before that Anthony Richardson doesn't necessarily need a full week of practice to go out there and play. So I think as long as everything checks out tomorrow, Anthony Richardson will be the starter on Saturday, which honestly, Drake, that bodes really well for the Colts in multiple different areas, but especially against this Giants team, because we've got Stats Matt stat of the day. We've got the first Stats Matt stat of the day presented by Busch Light. The Giants' defensive efficiency is worst in the NFL in deep passing, quarterback scrambles, runs from shotgun, and runs inside the tackles. So wow. Jonathan, that helps Jonathan Taylor there. But look, deep passing and quarterback scrambles where Anthony Richardson is at his best. Got another one for you about Anthony Richardson. Since returning from the benching, Anthony Richardson has 32 design runs, 10 more than any other quarterback. In those runs, he has forced a league-high 29% missed tackle rate and 12 first downs, just showing you how much Anthony Richardson has been dominating on the ground with his legs. And I'm sure the Colts plan to use that on Sunday. Fantastic stats by Stats Matt this evening. But Drake, let's assume that Anthony Richardson does play on Sunday. And when you look at the raw numbers, the Giants do rank 7th in the NFL against the pass, only allowing 200.5 yards per contest. But as you saw with those advanced stats that Matt put forward, it hasn't been pretty for the New York Giants on defense so far this season. So if Anthony Richardson does play, which, guys, I think he does play, I'll put it out there that I'd be a little bit surprised, honestly, if Anthony Richardson did not play on Sunday. Drake, what are your expectations for number 5 heading into this one?
I mean, I'll put this in my prediction piece that releases tomorrow, but I really think there is just such a big opportunity for him to, especially when it's like short yardage and red zone, because they're going to march the ball at times. They will march the ball down the field against this team, just if for no other reason. I mean, their offense, I'm telling you, the Giants, you can lose to any team in the NFL, but if there was one team that you have probably the least amount of chance to lose to, no matter how hard you try, it's probably the Giants. They cannot move the ball offensively. So their defense is on the field a lot, and they don't really force turnovers. I just think that this is a great game for Anthony Richardson to really make this team pay in the red zone. I think that the short yardage is going to work. I think that he's going to have another carbon copy of last week. I really do think that they're going to give the ball repeatedly to Jonathan Taylor. There's no more Dexter Lawrence in the middle to do anything. I mean, Brian Burns is a hell of a football player. Dexter Lawrence, though, is basically like having 2 defensive tackles. Okay, he's just a monster and arguably the best in the NFL, and he's not there. You must run the football, and you must use Anthony Richardson, Taylor, Sermon, every which way you can. I think that Richardson is probably going to be limited again as a passer. You're not going to need him to do much, but I think when he completes those passes, they're going to be some pretty explosive plays because, like Stats Matt said, the defense lets those up. So
we got a super chat here from Paul Wilson, the GOAT. Thank you so much, Paul, for all your support. We really, really do appreciate it. And Paul says, I'll never discount the Colts' ability to disappoint me. I have receipts. LOL. I think a lot of Colts fans have receipts. Yes, it hasn't been the most successful time for the Indianapolis Colts, to say the least. And that's why you can't guarantee a win on Sunday. The Colts have to actually go out there and execute. There are no guarantees with this team. So, Paul, thank you so much for all your support. We really, really do appreciate it. And Drake, I'm glad you brought up Brian Burns there in your answer, because it's a perfect segue to another stat of the day. Brian Burns leads the Giants with 57 pressures and almost a 50-50 split on the right or left side of the defensive line. Dexter Lawrence might not be in there, but Brian Burns is still in there. Kayvon Thibodeau is still in there as well. Thibodeau has not had his best season, admittedly, but he can still get after the quarterback. And the Colts saw that up close to a couple years ago when Thibodeau was a rookie. But Brian Burns is, I mean, the Giants traded for him in the offseason, and he has been a menace. He's continually getting pressure on the quarterback. When you just would look at the sack numbers for the Giants this year, Dexter Lawrence, who before he got hurt was making a case for Defensive Player of the Year, he has 9 sacks from the interior, but Brian Burns is second on the team with 8 sacks, Drake. So when you look at that, Brian Burns is their pass rusher. So whether he's lined up against Bernard Ryman, Matt Gonzalez, those guys are going to have their ducks in a row, essentially, and be on their P's and Q's to make sure that Burns doesn't get back there and wreck the game. But I think it's interesting when you were talking about, lean on Jonathan Taylor, lean on the run game. And while yes, the Giants do give up quite a bit from quarterback scrambles and quarterback runs, and Anthony Richardson has been used more in the quarterback run game since he returned from his benching. I do wonder if having the foot soreness, the back soreness is going to play a role in this and how Shane Steichen calls this game. I don't necessarily think that the Colts are going to use Anthony Richardson in the quarterback run game maybe as much, just because he is dealing with those things. You don't want to risk that that flaring up in the middle of the game and that impacting his play. And if you can have success with Jonathan Taylor on the ground like you did against the Tennessee Titans, then there's no reason to put Anthony Richardson there in harm's way. I'm not saying take it completely off the table. You never want to do that. That is one of the things that makes Anthony Richardson so dynamic, is his ability to use his legs. But instead of, running it 9-10 times a game, I think last week against the Titans, he had nine rushes. Dial that back a little bit, whether it's 4 or 5, 6 carries for Anthony Richardson, or design quarterback runs that you call. I think you can do that and still have success against this Giants team. But I will say this, I do think that Anthony Richardson, this is an opportunity for him to kind of show out as a passer, especially in that deep passing game. The Giants have been susceptible to those big plays through the air. You're likely getting Alec Pierce back from that concussion, which is going to be huge for the deep passing game. Obviously, we know Josh Downs. He's fully healthy. He's going to have the ability to break something. A.D. Mitchell with that catch against the Titans last week, we've noticed that the deep threat of A.D. Mitchell has been there all year. He's just never been able to convert on it. Maybe since he was able to convert one against the Titans, that's kind of unlocked something. And they're going to have some more trust in A.D. Mitchell, and A.D. Mitchell has more trust in himself to finish those plays. So I do think that this could be a game where the run game sets up that deep passing attack for the Indianapolis Colts. If Jonathan Taylor can really get going, allow Anthony Richardson to get into that rhythm, then you're going to see those shots over the top to Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and so on. So I do think that the game plan might be a little bit different because of Anthony Richardson's, dealing with some soreness and dealing with, some nagging things here and there. But I wouldn't expect the Colts to completely shy away from the quarterback run, nor should they. That's too important to this offense and this offense's success to have Anthony Richardson out there and running the football well.
Yeah, and I think that, maybe even put him in I think around the red zone, that's still a very viable opportunity to use him. Now, I do like what you said about his injury because, assuming he's perfectly fine, of course you want to do that. But you've also seen him get hurt in his rookie season. You saw him get hurt earlier this season against Pittsburgh. So you really do have to be a little bit more cautious than you probably want to be, but also I think that he's smart enough and talented enough to understand at this point, look, I'm rehabbing at least a little bit of soreness here in my foot and back. Probably don't want to get hit in certain areas. So it's also about body control for Anthony Richardson too, if his number is called. So
yeah. And here's an interesting question from Paul Wilson, another super chat. Paul, thank you so much again for all of your support. We really, really do mean it every single time you send us a super chat. And Paul does ask a very interesting question here, Drake. We will know before Sunday if Anthony Richardson needs to play. Both Denver and the Chargers play on Saturday before Sunday. Yes. Maybe shut him down if they are eliminated. So it's interesting. I can't speak to say if I know for certainty if the Colts will shut him down. It doesn't seem like that is in their prerogative, and I don't think Anthony Richardson would necessarily want to be held out either. With everything that he's gone through this season, especially the preparation, already being benched, I don't know if he necessarily want to be put down or benched or held out of the game, even if the Colts are eliminated from the playoffs. I do think that he would still want to go out there and regardless if the Colts are still available to go for the playoffs, he'd want to go out there and give it his all and continue to build on this. And I don't think they would necessarily hold him out for that either. They want to see more out of Anthony Richardson, to see him finish the season off strong. But what do you think, Drake? I'm actually going to put you in Shane Steichen's shoes right now. If the Colts are eliminated before their game on Sunday, because if the Broncos and the Chargers win on Saturday, then the Colts would be eliminated from playoff contention. If you're Shane Steichen and the Chargers and the Broncos both win, would you sit Anthony Richardson, or would you roll him out there to go against the Giants?
I think, you've like you mentioned, you've benched him. He had an awful start to the season. He's faced adversity this year. I think that he needs to get more experience. He needs to keep playing football. I think that let's say that, they're eliminated, right? why wouldn't you still put him out there for 2 more games? I would. If I was Shane Steichen, I'd be like, look, man, these two teams are not very good. You can learn a lot in these next 2 games, and you can also go out there and put the pedal to the metal and beat teams that we should be beating, because you want that kind of confidence. If for nothing else, you want it to carry into 2025. What if he goes out there, has 2 great contests he would not have had if you would have sat him for Joe Flacco, which, by the way, Flacco's played enough football. He doesn't need to play garbage football. That's Anthony Richardson's time to continue learning. So I'd keep him out there.
Yeah, I think the only way that they wouldn't play him at that point is if whatever is dealing with within the foot in the back, if it had a chance of becoming much worse and potentially jeopardizing the next season, then you'd probably want to hold him out. Otherwise, I do think he'd want to be in there because, as Paul Wilson said, I think he needs to show leadership and toughness. He should play. I was just thinking how cautious our organization is. Yeah, and yeah. I do think that Anthony wants to play. He's doing everything he possibly can to be out there, and if he can play, he's going to play on Sunday. But Paul, again, thank you so much, man, for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it, and it's a great question. But Drake, let's talk about Jonathan Taylor. Talk about Jonathan Taylor out there, because coming off of that fantastic performance, 218 yards against the Tennessee Titans, and he is going up against one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. The Giants are 31st in the league against the run, allowing 142.6 yards per game. Stats Matt coming in with the fantastic stats on the running game here. The Colts are 12th in rushing efficiency. The Giants are 29th in rush defense efficiency, Drake. Pretty stark difference in those two. Colts close to the top 10, Giants near the bottom of the league. The Giants have also allowed the second most 10-plus yard runs at 64. And we just saw Jonathan Taylor break off a 65-yard run and a 70-yard run against the Tennessee Titans. So that's big. There could be an opportunity for big plays here, Drake. And here's one final one. Jonathan Taylor has 179 yards over expected, which is the 6th most in the NFL. The Giants have allowed the most yards over expected with 429 rushing yards over expected, nearly double the second highest team. This run defense for the New York Giants is atrocious, especially with Dexter Lawrence not in there. Bobby Okereke, the former Colt, is on IR as well. They have really nobody there in the middle of the defense that is good at stopping the runs. So Drake, with that being said, what are your expectations for Jonathan Taylor this weekend?
Well, I think that when you're coming off of back-to-back games with over 100 rushing yards, of course you have, a game where you have 3 rushing touchdowns and you have 2 different scores that are over 60 yards. I mean, you need to give Jonathan Taylor the football regardless of who the hell the opponent is after a game like that. Okay, so that's first and foremost. But Dexter Lawrence, to Colts fans that might not know this, is an absolute monster. Okay, demands double teams, demands respect from everyone on the offensive line that's even close to him, because they might have to help block him. Without him, like Andrew said, they don't really have an anchor in the middle. And I know Mark Glowinski was, again, pretty bad, in the win against the Titans, but this is a bounce back game for a guy like him. Guys like Ryan Kelly, guys like Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson is about to destroy somebody. Like, the Giants really need to step up here. They have to answer the call because they're facing a team that's coming off of over 300 rushing yards as a unit. So I expect Jonathan Taylor to have, I don't know about 200 plus rushing yards. I think to expect him to do that again is a little bit far-fetched, but I do expect over 100 rushing yards. I expect him to find the end zone, and I expect him to get the ball between 20, 25 times again, for no other reason, Richardson's soreness, if he's still dealing with anything like that.
So. Yeah, I do think that, we could talk about, do we think Jonathan Taylor, it's a very far-fetched idea, like you said, Drake, but do we think Jonathan Taylor could potentially break the record for rushing yards in a game? Adrian Peterson said it way back when with 296 yards. Jonathan Taylor's career high is 253, just had 218 last week. I'm not going to say it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it's certainly possible, and I'd almost put it out there that I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I shouldn't say I wouldn't be shocked. Wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Taylor did break break the rushing record against this team. Do I think it's likely to happen? No. I'm on board with you, Drake. I do think that Jonathan Taylor is set up to have a really big game, though. I do think that this offensive line is clicking. What they showed last week was some of the best football I've seen. I think getting Ryan Kelly back, while Ryan Kelly hasn't performed hasn't played his best ball this year, I think that people underestimate the amount of communication that Ryan Kelly has in there. And Ryan Kelly is still the better player than Tanner Bortolini or Danny Pinter. But I think that certainly helped. Quentin Nelson was absolutely fantastic against the Tennessee Titans. Bernard Ryman was fantastic. Pro Football Focus, I think, even had Bernard Ryman graded ahead of Quentin Nelson for that last game. Matt Gonzalez in the run game was fantastic. So I think it does hinge a lot on the offensive line as well. The offensive line can't go back to having games where they're not getting any push. They're not opening the holes. They're kind of just stalling out right there. Jonathan Taylor has nowhere to go. Then obviously you're not going to have much success. But I do want to see that offensive line making hay. I think that last week is what the identity of this football team can be. Running the football with Anthony Richardson, with Jonathan Taylor, having that offensive line dominate. You've put a lot of money into that offensive line. They need to be performing like it. And then having Anthony Richardson, while he continues to develop that passing game, so you slowly build his confidence up that way. But yeah, Drake, I mean, 150, 160 yards out of Jonathan Taylor and two touchdowns, not out of the realm of possibility. Again, it probably wouldn't shock me to see that. I could see that and say, yeah, that's kind of what would be expected, considering how Jonathan Taylor is right now, and he's healthy, he's feeling good, he's obviously coming off his best game of the year, his confidence is sky high, and I think that's just going to continue to fuel this Colts running game throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, right now he still has 2 games left, and he's got 237 carries, by the way, the second most of his entire career, 1,129 rushing yards, third most only by 40 yards, which he will break if he gets through the next 2 games with at least a halfway decent performance. And I mean, he's got 8 touchdowns. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's he's by all regards had a pretty damn good season. And so for him to rip off a performance like that, yeah, I think that it could not be a better next game after a game like that than to face the 31st worst rushing defense in the entire NFL without their best star on the field. It's all there on paper. The whole record thing you spoke of that sounds far-fetched, this is the matchup. If it was to happen, the situation with the Giants and the defense and everything, this is the matchup for it to happen. But we at least expect Taylor to pop off again in some regards.
Yeah, and the reason I say the offensive line is going to be critical, because I feel like if Jonathan Taylor can break that through that first line of defense, get through the defensive line, get to that second level, there's a good chance that there's going to be an explosive play to follow that. We already went over the stat, how the Giants have allowed the second most 10-plus yard runs. Here's another one for you, Drake, from Stats Matt. The Giants are 8th in the missed tackle percentage at 14.3%, while having given up the most yards after missed tackles at 1,040, the only team over 1,000 yards, which signals the Giants miss a tackle, there's going to be an explosive play to follow that. So whether it's the through the air or on the ground, we saw last week against the Titans, Jonathan Taylor, once he gets to the second level, he can make anybody miss. That's still true to this day, and he made Amani Hooker look like a fool on that 65-yard touchdown run. So again, if this offensive line can do their job, create the holes for Jonathan Taylor, and he can get to that second level, I think it's going to be curtains for the New York Giants. And I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be in line for another big day. I think Jonathan Taylor is, even with missing the 4 games or so, he's still like 8th in the NFL in rushing. If he has another huge performance, Drake, he could very well end up with still 3rd in the league in rushing. Obviously not catching Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, but I think Kyron Williams is 3rd, and he's only 100 yards or so ahead of Jonathan Taylor. So I mean, it's not another realm possibility, especially with how hot Jonathan Taylor is running the football right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the guy's also averaging 4.8 yards a carry and 95 or 94 yards per game on the ground. So I think that this is a golden opportunity for the momentum to continue. I think it's also a golden opportunity for you to take your best. He's still the best offensive player. Okay, period. All right. It's a good opportunity for you to say, hey, if Richardson goes out there and he's a little sore, or even if he's not sore and we're a little, cautious about it, you can lean on Jonathan Taylor against arguably, one of the worst, if not well, they are the second worst running defense in the NFL. So everything is laid out perfectly. It's just about execution. It's about not giving up on the ground game, which you saw Steichen. Once it works, he just keeps on doing it over and over. If he does that again, I mean, there's a really good opportunity that Anthony Richardson, yet again, doesn't have to do much as a passer, or in this case, as a runner.
Now let's talk about through the air, Drake, because Anthony Richardson will still have to convert through the air. The Colts, they're not going to run it 100% of the time. They did it close last week against the Tennessee Titans. But I think the biggest matchup to watch between the Colts wide receivers and the defensive backs of the New York Giants is right there in the slot. Josh Downs versus Drew Phillips. Drew Phillips is a rookie, and he's been fantastic at that nickel spot this year, Drake. I think at one point, and it may even still be, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think at one point, Pro Football Focus actually had Drew Phillips as one of their top-rated cornerbacks in the NFL, and he's been one of the bright spots for the New York Giants defense. But as we saw last week, Josh Downs is pretty good as well. And yes, Drew Phillips is currently the 6th highest graded cornerback, according to Pro Football Focus. Kenny Moore is 9th. When you look at coverage grade, though, Drake, Drew Phillips isn't even in the top 10. He's just below Kenny Moore. I think he's 11th. So still doing fairly well. But he having his ability to help in the run game has certainly helped as well. So when looking at that matchup, Drake, who would you give the advantage to? Josh Downs or Drew Phillips?
Well, I do think that Drew Phillips is incredibly shifty. He's very sticky too on slot coverage. Now, the thing is, though, Josh Down, it's about the separation. It's the space that he creates, and then after that, it's like, well, you're at his mercy at that point. Like, the routes that the guy runs, it's that separation. I think you're going to see a nice battle there. That's actually a really cool matchup you mentioned, because there's not a lot to talk about, and this isn't being mean, it's just the truth. The Giants are littered with injuries too. Okay, they're not just bad; they're littered with injuries. There's not a lot to talk about outside of a guy like Brian Burns. So this is a great matchup, but I do think I would give the advantage a little bit to Josh Downs. Not too much, because you're dealing with a hell of a corner that I think has a bright future in the NFL, and in some regards reminds you of Kenny Moore, because he just seems like he's going to be a reliable guy in the slot. I just think that this is a game where Josh Downs is going to have at least 4 or 5 catches, because Richardson is going to need to probably throw the ball more than 11 times, right? Because he's not going to be able to run it, 10, 12 times. So I think that I'd give the advantage to Downs, but not by too much. I think that'll be a good matchup to watch for sure.
See, I do think that Phillips has had a really good season, but Drake, I think that Josh Downs has not an overwhelming advantage, but I think an obvious advantage in this one. I do think that while Drew Phillips has been very good in coverage, especially for a rookie, I do think that Josh Downs has shown that his explosive element is all the way there. He's healthy. He's not dealing with any nagging injuries, and as we've seen, the past few weeks, Josh Downs has really been able to get open and create space when needed. And his ability to make plays after the catch, that was something that stood out in that Titans game that I think the Colts are really going to rely on. Again, that missed tackle percentage, Drake, if Josh Downs is able to create a missed tackle, he's going to be very dangerous in that open field. So while I don't think that Josh Downs is going to have a 150-yard performance, he's certainly capable of it. I'm not.
Sure.
I don't see that. I just don't see the game going that way. I do think that Josh Downs will be the leading receiver for the Colts again on Sunday, and I do think that Drew Phillips is going to have a little bit of a tougher matchup with Josh Downs, who's quickly becoming one of the best slot receivers in the NFL.
Well, I mean, he's quickly becoming the best receiver for the Colts, actually, as well. I mean, this is no knock on Michael Pittman, but I mean, Josh Downs, man, there's still 2 games left. I know that we have to talk about this game, but look out for year 3 of that guy. Oh my God. Josh Downs in year 3, that's going to be scary. So.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly would help if Michael Pittman was healthy. But if Pittman's healthy next year and Josh Downs takes that another step forward that we're expecting, I mean, Richardson's going to have a couple of really, really good targets, but Pittman's got to get the back figured out first before we even get to that point. But let's switch gears here, Drake. Let's talk about the Colts defense, who, through 3 quarters or through, 2.5 quarters of this thing, I should say, against the Titans, had only given up 7 points. Then the Colts kind of went into ultra conservative mode, and the Titans were able to claw back into it. A lot more missed tackles. Definitely not the best performance by some of the guys out there. But again, you're going. It's a new game, and I think that, as Shane Steichen mentioned, he's like, that can't happen again. I don't anticipate the Colts getting that conservative that early anymore. We'll have to see, obviously, but I think a conversation was had in that regard. And say what you will about Mason Rudolph, I think Drew Lock is even a step below Mason Rudolph in terms of quarterback. The quarterback situation there with the Giants has been abysmal, to say the least, all season long. Daniel Jones no longer there. That's been well documented. Going back and forth between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. Drew Lock looks like to be the one that's going to start on Sunday. 624 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions in 6 games this season. Drake, not very good for the quarterback of the New York Giants. In fact, his quarterback rating is 55.8 on the season, which yikes to that, and the Giants as a whole are 29th in passing offense, only averaging 185.4 yards per game. So, Drake, I'll be honest, and I mean no disrespect to Drew Lock, because he is a better spinner of the football than I will ever be in my entire life. But does Drew Lock even pose a threat to this Colts defense? And I say that knowing full well that the Colts defense has made average to below average quarterbacks look really, really good at times. But from what I've seen on film of Drew Lock this season with the Giants, boy, it doesn't look good. So, are you afraid of Drew Lock on Sunday having success against this Colts defense? Or, like I said, do you think he even poses a threat to go out there and have a good game on Sunday?
I mean, there's times where Drew Lock can be athletic. All right. There's times where, he can make things happen with his feet, and he can make some plays. But, I also look at the 52.7 percent completion percentage, 68 out of 129 passes completed. I mean, does he pose a threat? Sure. But this is a game where, I mean, if I'm Gus Bradley, even unless it's like maybe a couple minutes into the 4th quarter and you're looking at a major deficit that your opponent has to climb back into, if I'm Gus Bradley, I'm sticking the coverage at least halfway decent the whole game, because Drew Lock is not finding his targets. Why let up the coverage until you absolutely need to, when you got a guy that can't find his targets? God forbid if Malik Neighbors does not play and you have Wan'Dale Robinson, by the way, averaging like 7.5 yards per catch. Dude has like 70 catches, barely over 500 receiving yards. Drew Lock is not – he's just not this is going to sound so mean. The other guy is Tim Boyle, that has also played. He is nearing the level of Tommy DeVito or Tim Boyle. I mean, Daniel Jones was, and on this chart is, the most talented quarterback that the Giants have had this season, and that's saying something. So I don't think that he poses much of a threat. I just think that you can't let him get into a rhythm. Don't let him get easy completions. Again, if you're Gus Bradley, don't allow a 38-7 lead to evaporate. like that. Don't give him easy completions. I say make it hard on him until absolutely necessary when you can absolutely let off that gas.
Yeah, I think the game plan for the Colts passing defense on Sunday is fairly simple. Just
Yes.
execute. It doesn't have to be rocket science out there. The Giants, as we look at this, Drew Lock's long of this season, his longest completion, 23 yards. 23 yards. Not very good. The Colts don't have to be exotic in their coverages. They just can't let someone like a Wan'Dale Robinson or a Malik Neighbors get behind them.
Yes.
I think that's what would allow an easy deep shot to one of those guys to boost Drew Lock's confidence. That's what you don't need to happen. And I certainly think that this Colts defense up front is going to pin their ears back and get after Drew Lock as well. Has not been very, very good on the offensive line. That's Drew Lock has been sacked 12 times. So while he hasn't taken too many sacks in those 6 games, he's certainly affected quite a bit by pressure. Stats, Matt, another stat of the day. This one on the Giants offense, Drake. The Giants offensive efficiency is 27th or worse in all of these categories: deep passing, play action passing, passing versus the blitz, rushes versus stacked boxes, and quick passing. The Colts defense is top 10 in those on defense. So again, this is a very, very bad matchup for the New York Giants, because it seems like on both sides of the ball, Drake, what the Colts are good at and have shown to have are gaining momentum in these specific areas, the Giants have been bad all season. So I just think that again, you got to actually go out there and play the games. But on paper, this is a very, very bad matchup for the New York Giants. And again, like I was saying, 27th or worse in deep passing, play action passing, passing versus the blitz, quick passing. Drake, this Colts defense just can't go out there and beat themselves. Don't allow easy completions, like you were saying, for Drew Lock deep. Don't allow him to get his confidence. Make sure that you're not just having those dumb mental errors where you're having a busted coverage and it ends up being an easy 6 points. There's no reason for that. As long as they go out there and execute and play their game, I think this Colts defense is going to be just fine.
Yes, and something that's kind of crazy to think about, 61 points is how many points the Colts have let up in the last 2 games combined: 31 to the Denver Broncos and 30 to the Titans. Yet they have 6 turnovers, 6 interceptions, which they don't have any fumbles in these last 2 games. So that's 6 turnovers in the last 3 games. You have Zaire Franklin picked one off, Nick Cross picked one off, Sam Womack picked off 2, and Kenny Moore picked off 2. I mean, Drew Lock throws interceptions. It's again, I'll just say this: we are providing so many absolute damning stats that the Colts really have no business losing this football game. They must execute. You must win this game. You're playing a quarterback that can't figure it out. His best receivers are rookie and a guy that's just now finding it, and he's not really a deep threat, and a running back that might not even play in Tyrone Tracy, and their best player on defense is not even playing because he's injured with an elbow injury, and then Brian Burns is pretty much the lone dude. Everything makes sense in this game for the Colts, especially on the defense, which I'm really glad I picked him up in fantasy. Victory to me.
There you go. And here's the thing too, Drake. If I'm Shane Steichen and I'm talking to my team this week, I'm not even mentioning that the Giants are 2-14, I think is their record, something like that. You don't mention that. You don't mention really any of these stats to them. You just mention, we just got to go out there and execute. If we go out there and execute, we'll win this football game. Really put in the emphasis on execution. Don't think about anything else, because that's literally going to be the key. If the Colts just go out there and execute, they're going to be fine. They don't need to place a heavy emphasis on if these things go right, then we'll have a shot. Just go out there and play your game. Don't get crazy. Don't get cute on offense or defense. Go out there, execute, play how this team knows how to play, and don't put any extra pressure on yourselves. Allow this Colts team to go out there and play free, and I think that will, in the end, allow them to execute better. And as long as they do that, I think they'll be just fine. Now let's look at the run, the one of the weapons, one of the underrated weapons, in my my opinion, for this Giants offense, and that's Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy, the rookie out of Purdue, the running back for the Giants, has a wide receiver background as well. He's actually putting together a really good rookie season. On the ground, 721 yards, 5 touchdowns, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. And then through the air, he's also added 263 yards and a touchdown. So, on his way to having 1,000 yards from scrimmage. I'm not sure if he has anything in terms of the return game. He does have a little bit of return, but as far as on offense, Tyrone Tracy closing in on over 1,000 yards. So he's definitely a weapon for this Giants offense. And the Giants are a little bit better on the ground as opposed to through the air. They've got the 21st best rushing offense, averaging 106.9 yards per game. I think where the Colts defense does what they don't want to do is allow for this game to not be put on Drew Lock's shoulders. I think if the Colts force Drew Lock to beat them, easy W. I really do. But if the Colts allow Tyrone Tracy to get going, Malik Neighbors to get going, which we'll talk about in a second, that's when things could get more difficult. So what do you think the Colts, again, what do you think the Colts need to do in order to make sure that Tyrone Tracy doesn't have a big game on Sunday?
I mean, dude, you've got to continue to command the interior gaps. I just think that, he's a hell. I think it's been an awesome story for Tyrone Tracy, just because for no other reason, Devin Singletary was supposed to be the guy. And he just puts him off to the side and just takes over as a rookie. But I think that it's all about making absolutely sure that if he's going to beat you, make him do it to the outside where he's got to deal with Leatu Latu. He's got to deal with a run defender like Kwity Paye. He's got to deal with, a guy like Jalen Carlisle or a guy like Zaire Franklin. Make it difficult on Tyrone Tracy to get the yardage. Don't make it an easy A-gap run where he's, able to get physical and, or elusive, in the second level. I mean, the Colts, we're talking about the Giants missing tackles. The Colts have also missed tackles. So it's like, it's all about that interior gap management. And so I know it's cliche as hell, but DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, God forbid, I can't believe I'm saying this, Raekwon Davis, who has somehow turned out to be worse than Taven Bryan. Those are the guys that you really need to command this game. Force Tyrone Tracy to have difficult runs and also force this game to get put on Drew Lock's shoulders because, like you said, this is no offense to Drew Lock. The more he throws, the better it is for your defense. So
yeah, exactly. So I think, you talked about, making sure the Colts are disciplined in their gaps. I think that's going to be very important. I also think missed tackles. Can't have as many missed tackles as you had against the Tennessee Titans. Zaire Franklin in particular had a lot of missed tackles, at least what I saw live there. So if the Colts can just eliminate those missed tackles, I think that's going to be big because Tyrone Tracy does have some agility to him. He is a guy that can force missed tackles and make some plays out in space. Has that wide receiver background as well. So again, you can't just let him catch that 4 or 5 yard pass, miss a tackle, and it ends up being a 10, 11 yard gain. Have to have, again, it all just goes back to execution. Have to execute. Can't miss a lot of tackles. Wrap the guys up when you need to. And again, I think you'll be just fine. Malik Neighbors, on the other hand, different story. Malik Neighbors is a hell of a talent, Drake, and he's without Malik Neighbors. I don't know if the Giants would even have won a game this season because the offense would be even just way less than what they've put forth this season. Malik Neighbors having a really good rookie season, 97 catches, 969 yards, only averaging 10 yards per catch, been targeted 154 times. And he's doing this without really good quarterback play. 4 touchdowns on the year. Now Malik Neighbors hasn't practiced this week. He told the media that he will be a game time decision. So his status is still up in the air. We'll have to see if he actually does play on Sunday. Hustleman Jones, thank you so much for all your support. Better late than never. Late, but I made it exactly. Better late than never. We'd love to see you trying your best to make it to these live shows. Appreciate the hell out of you, brother, and thank you so much for all of your support. But Drake, when talking about Neighbors, let's assume he does play on Sunday. What's going to be the key to containing Malik Neighbors out there and not allowing the rookie go off for 120, 8 catches, 120 yards and a score, and putting this Colts pass defense in some pretty difficult spots.
It's not going to, weirdly, it's not going to be as easy as you'd think, because the guy only has a long of 39, but he's just been so consistent. I mean, he's averaging 12 targets a game, basically, 6 catches a game with absolute garbage field general play. Okay. 154 of, by the way, the team's 504 passes. I mean, that is insane. Him and Wan'Dale Robinson they make up well over half of the targets. But I think that it's all hands on deck. I know that sounds crazy, but you need to have really good cornerback play from everybody, because this is a guy that can attack you from pretty much every angle. And he's such a great route runner. I mean, Andrew, you wrote you were a part of the Indy draft guide. We covered the draft. We felt like Malik Neighbors would have been an incredible option for the Colts, and he's just proving it with a really rough team right now. So I think if he does suit up, you got to make sure that he doesn't beat you over the top. You got to make sure that he doesn't go over that long of 39 for the season. Don't allow him to also beat you under. I mean, he's going to get his catches. You just have to let him get his, but don't let him get too much of his. Okay, he's going to get those targets. He's going to get those catches. Just don't let him beat you over the top, and don't miss too many tackles, because he's also got the foot speed to make you pay.
So. Yeah. Believe it or not, the Colts really haven't had too many wide receivers have huge games against them this year. That's a credit to Samuel Womack, Jalen Jones, Kenny Moore. It's a credit to all of those guys out there. But again, I'm on board with you, Drake. I think it's pretty simple. I mean, easier said than done, but the premise is simple. It's just you can't allow him to beat you deep. And again, I think that goes back to just going out there and executing. The whole premise of this Colts defense is not allowing the explosive play. Obviously, we've seen in back-to-back weeks how Samuel Womack has gotten picked on a little bit with some explosive plays, like Calvin Ridley last week. Then he comes back and gets you an interception. Okay, can't count on that every single week, but I do think that when you have Womack and Jones back there, Jones is fantastic at getting the football away. We've seen Samuel Womack kind of come into his own in terms of helping generate turnovers, and Kenny Moore, you know what you're getting with Kenny Moore. He's an absolute star there in the slot, who's going to be matched up with Wan'Dale Robinson. It's going to be interesting to see if Kenny Moore can basically eliminate Robinson from the conversation, and then if he does, then it's pretty much neighbors or bust. And I think that if you do that, then the Colts can kind of key in on neighbors as well. Again, we'll have to see if he even is out there and playing, and if he's not, huge hit to this Giants offense, and really helps this Colts offense in their quest to take down this really struggling Giants team. X factors, Drake. I think, again, like we've said through this entire episode, it's really just going to come down to execution for the Colts. So that kind of plays into who our X factors might be. So taking all this into account, everything we've talked about for the past 50 minutes, who's your X factor in this game for the Colts to get the job done in the Meadowlands?
X factor is Gus Bradley, and that's because I feel like I just want the scheme just moderate. You just need it to be on cruise control. You don't need to be conservative. You don't need to be hardcore. Maybe if you are aggressive, make it early. Okay, make it early. Make Drew Lock uncomfortable early. But other than that, man, this is just a weird situation in the NFL where there's bad teams. Okay, most of the time there's bad teams. Then there's usually one or two every year, but usually one, where they're just god-awful. And this is no offense to Giants fans. They know this. They just know it. This team is atrocious on almost every front, okay, but especially offensively. They can't do diddly poo with the football, and they can't do it, especially with Drew Lock. I just think that this is a Gus Bradley game. I think that you can, if you win this game 31-28, 31-24, and you previously had a long lead, and they climb back into it with a guy like Lock, who, like you said, is a downgrade from Mason Rudolph. I think that's a little bit sad. So hoping Gus Bradley at least keeps the pedal to the cruise control area a little bit in this one all the way through.
Yeah, hey, you're stealing Stats Matt's thunder. You took the answer right out of his mouth. X
Correct.
Factor, Gus Bradley. Let's get a big lead and not get get so passive so early. He said, "Damn it, Drake stole my thunder." Paul Wilson
That's because we're
likes it.
smart.
Yeah. Really likes it. Paul Wilson also says, "I need to see Latu do something. I'm disappointed in him." I think that Paul, what we've seen out of Latu is, had the sack numbers been there? No, but the pressures have been, and everything the Colts feel like he's going to eventually turn those pressures into sacks, and I certainly would help if the Colts would get some help as far as allowing their pass rushers to be able to get there as well. But Drake, my X factor is going to be the offensive line for the Indianapolis Colts, because like I said, if Jonathan Taylor can reach the second level, I think it's going to be curtains for the New York Giants. So I think as long as the offensive line can get push, really fend off the defensive line for the New York Giants, create those holes, I think you're going to see a really, really big day out of Jonathan Taylor. And not only Jonathan Taylor, but keeping Anthony Richardson upright as well, not allowing him to get pressure, because as we've all seen, something that Anthony Richardson desperately needs to work on, and I don't think that it's going to be fixed in these last two games, but Richardson performs much worse when he's under pressure. When he's kept clean and he's got a clean pocket to operate from, he throws the football much more accurately. His mechanics are much more in tune. His lower body is much more married to his upper body. That's when you see a much better Anthony Richardson. So I'm going offensive line. I really am. I think it's going to be another game for them to kind of show their might. And if they go out there and dominate, it's going to be an easy victory for the Indianapolis Colts. Hustle Man Jones said the X Factor is JT and Josh Downs. I want to see them fed heavily in this game. So yes, it's going to be I think both those guys are going to have big games on Sunday, and it will probably potentially lead to a Colts win. But Drake, Colts Giants in the Meadowlands, 1:00 Eastern on Sunday. 7.5-point favorites for the Indianapolis Colts. And again, must win. They could potentially be eliminated from the playoffs by the time this game starts if the Broncos and the Chargers both win on Sunday. But if not, they still have everything right in front of them. So, Drake, what do you see happening? Colts, are they going to get the victory on the road against the worst team in the NFL, or do the Giants pull off the upset and make the Colts question everything about their future?
No, I'm going Colts. I think that they're going to win 28-17. I don't think it's going to be an ass kicking. Okay. I do think, though, that this defense will get turnovers, at least one. I mean, I think that you're going to see Gus Bradley at least keep a 2-score lead going, and it'll be a nice cruise control victory. I don't really know if you need to destroy this team. I think if you have them kind of at an arm's length, or a stiff arm's length, if you will, since we're talking about football, offensively with your defense, I think that you can just kind of operate not conservatively, but you can operate comfortably offensively, where you're not, asking Richardson to put the ball in harm's way, because, hey, he has thrown 5 interceptions in the last 3 games.
Okay, so you're going 28-17 Colts. We've got Hustle Man Jones saying 38-3 Colts monster AR game passing efficiency, best of the season. That'd be one hell of a blowout, Hustle Man Jones. I'm not going that far in terms of blowout, but I do think the Colts win. I'm going to go 34-16 in this one. I do think that the Colts, with that rushing attack, is going to dominate again. I'm predicting over 200 yards rushing. I don't know if they'll get to 300 yards rushing. If they do, then Jonathan Taylor may have broken the record for rushing yards in a game, or at least broken his own Colts franchise record for rushing yards in a game. I think the Colts are going to dominate up front. I really do, on both sides of the ball. We didn't even talk about the Giants offensive line, Drake, but the Giants offensive line is pretty abysmal. I do think that Latu, Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, the whole bunch, they're going to have a really big game. That's what's going to cause the offense for the Giants to really crumble. But yeah, I do think it's going to be a big game on Jonathan Taylor. I don't think you're going to need to rely on Anthony Richardson to go out there and win the game. I think he's going to have his moments, but ride 28 on the way to victory again. So I'm going Colts 34, Colts 34, Giants 16, and we'll see what happens in week 18 in terms of the playoff stats. Matt is going 31-13 Colts. We've got Julian Rodriguez 35-14 Colts. JT and AR go off. Tressa agrees with you, Drake, 28-17 Colts. CMDSR season high points for the Colts, 42-24, and Paul Wilson going 28-19. Merry Christmas to you, Joe Camacho. Happy New Year as well. One of our good friends, and someone that we've known for a long time. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. But everyone's on the Colts, and I think that's a pretty safe bet heading into this game on Sunday. Drake, let's quickly go through the Colts injury report here. It's a longer one, but honestly, not as bad as it may look. Obviously, Mo Alley Cox hasn't practiced all week. Same with Anthony Richardson and EJ Speed. Those are the three guys that haven't seen the practice field. Again, I think Anthony Richardson plays. I know it may be concerning to some, but the Wednesday practice wasn't a practice. They didn't practice on Wednesday. They've only had one practice this week. They're being cautious with Richardson. I think he plays this week. EJ Speed, we'll see. He looks like could potentially miss the second game in a row. Mo Alley Cox, we'll have to see as well. But again, I think you're kind of happy to see, or not happy, but you're rest assured in terms of the linebacker spot, Drake, that while EJ Speed didn't play last week, Jalen Carlisle had a huge game, and as you saw right there, Carlisle's limited in practice. I'd expect him to play.
Carlisle has been an absolute find. I mean, he's played fantastic in coverage, and he did a great job filling in, led the team in tackles last week. A name that I'm looking at outside of Anthony Richardson, which again, Wednesday's practice was a unique situation where it was an estimation. That basically means that they're just guessing. Okay, so I think that if the Colts say they're cautiously optimistic, that in Shane Steichen code means he's probably going to play. I'm looking at Juju Brents, though. Look at that. You got yourself a full estimation of Wednesday practice. You got yourself a full Thursday practice. I mean, is this when we finally see Juju Brents return? Because look, if for some reason he comes back and they do have Malik Neighbors, that could be a good addition. And if they don't, that could be even better for the rangy cornerback. So
yeah, like you mentioned, Juju Brents was a full participant in practice today. I would assume that Brents is back. He's activated off IR. The bigger question for me, Drake, is will Juju Brents start? Is he going to start over Sam Womack? Or is Sam Womack going to get the start and they're going to rotate Brents in with Womack there? That's going to be interesting to kind of see. But yeah, I would expect Brents back. Jalen Jones, after going out with that throat injury against the Titans, he's been full all week. He'll be good to go. Alec Pierce is past the concussion protocol at this point. He will be good to go. Michael Pittman as well. He's going to fight through it. And then Quentin Nelson, he's going to fight through that ankle injury as well. So really the ones to watch, obviously Richardson, will know more about that tomorrow or on Friday. EJ Speed, Mo Alley Cox, their status is up in the air as well. But Colts, potentially getting Brents, Pierce back, really, really good news for both sides of the ball. And I think Alec Pierce could have a pretty big impact on Sunday if the Colts get the deep ball going.
Yeah, you're talking about a defense that lets up so many explosive plays. Well, why not use your most explosive receiver, arguably the best 50-50 ball guy in the NFL on any given Sunday?
Yeah, exactly. Hustle Man Jones, we appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you so much for the support. This is my favorite live show, I swear. Go Colts. Hustle Man Jones, we appreciate you so much, man. Thank you so much for the kind words. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Hope you're having a fantastic holiday season. And thank you so much for all your support and watching our show every Monday and Thursday night. Drake, let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors as well. Let's give JT some more flowers, shouldn't we? Jonathan Taylor was named the AFC Offensive Player of the Week and the FedEx Ground Player of the Week for Week 16. We'll run through the stats again. 29 carries, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns for JT. Well-deserved honor and really a no-brainer for both of these awards.
Yeah, and it's just a testament to, you mentioned this in our last episode before this one, that this is what still can happen. when you have Jonathan Taylor at his absolute best against any team.
Exactly. Let's look at some roster moves for the Colts, Drake. Mark Lewinsky finally moved up from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. He'll be the starting right guard for the rest of the season. To make room for Mark Lewinsky, the Colts waived guard Antonio Mafi, who was then later signed back to the practice squad, along with safety Michael Tutsi. Safety, he is back on the practice squad as well. And because of that, the Colts placed cornerback Trey Flowers on the practice squad injured list. So really the big thing from that, Mark Lewinsky going to the 53-man roster. The reason he did that is because he's been elevated from the practice squad to the active roster for game day 3 times now. After that third time, he either has to be moved up to the practice squad or to the active roster or released off the practice squad. So Colts are elevating him. Easy decision. He, like I said, he's going to be the starting right guard for the rest of the year. Has outperformed Dalton Tucker. You just hope he doesn't have a repeat performance in these final 2 games like he did against the Denver Broncos when, man, he had a rough outing.
Yeah, and really the one game Glow has looked good has been against the New England Patriots. So if there's one game that he can bounce back and look better than ever, it's against the team that didn't want him. So
yeah. Exactly. So gonna be very very interesting to see this game on Sunday. I think everybody is on the Colts to win, and honestly, they should be. The stats on paper, the Colts are a more talented football team. The stats certainly back that up, as we saw tonight. The key is just to go out there and execute. If the Colts go into this game thinking they're just going to blow the doors off the Giants, that would be the worst thing possible that they can do. They need to go out there. They need to focus on executing. And if they do that, and if they can win the trenches like I think they're going to, they'll be just fine, and they'll end up getting their 8th win of the season.
Just go out there, like you mentioned, execute. It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to be mundane. You just need to go out there and execute your game plan, because this is a team that if you just do that, you're probably going to cruise to a victory.
Going to be interesting to see what happens on Sunday against this New York Giants football team. And that's our show for today, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk Colts football on a week where the matchup isn't the greatest per se, but we really appreciate you all tuning in. Want to give a shout out to our super chats this evening, Paul Wilson and Hustleman Jones. Another shout out to Stats Matt for providing the fantastic stats all evening. And thank you all so much for joining us. Even if you didn't give a super chat, we appreciate all of your support, tuning in, commenting in the chat. Makes what we do so much fun. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell, turn on those notifications so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live wherever you listen to podcasts, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, it's Christmas week, but I know you've got stuff out there on the site. You've been writing away. Tell the people what they should go check out.
Yeah, there was a lot of moves. The Colts decided to do stuff on Christmas Day, which it's like, what the hell, guys? But anyway, the one that I'm really excited about is my 5 keys to a Colts victory over the Giants. So go check that out. But I've also got an Anthony Richardson passing and rushing statistics prediction that's going to be releasing in the morning. So go check that out as well.
Yeah, give those a read. Myself, I'm going to have more on Anthony Richardson. He talked to us this week and really talked about his mindset and how he's preparing, the things that he's seen change leading up to this Giants game. So you'll want to check that out. And guys, I'm going to have another piece out this time on Quentin Nelson this week and his impact on this team. A lot of the players were asked about Quentin Nelson this week, and their answers are probably what you would expect. But the level of respect and how much they go into detail about Quentin Nelson was pretty interesting. So I'll have a story out on that as well. Always love talking about Big Q, so make sure you check that out and everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake as I get the banners out of the way here. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be be back on Monday night to talk about everything from this Colts-Giants game. Are the Colts still in the playoff hunt at this point, or are they really just playing for pride the rest of the way? It's going to be a fun conversation to have on Monday night. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend, rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend as well. Enjoy the game on Sunday. We'll see you back here on Monday night to talk more Colts football with all of you.